Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Krista Gurka, as always, and I have a guest today. I am really excited to have Dr. Jen with us. Dr. Jen, who is the founder and CEO of Root to Rise Physical Therapy and Pelvic Health. I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how Root to Rise came to be.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so happy to be on the
I'm
podcast with
excited too.
you. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm a pelvic floor specialist, a yoga instructor. I dabble in a little bit of bar teaching, so I love teaching intentional movement. I would say before I introduce how Root to Rise came to be, I would say that how I got into pelvic health it's a good story. And I actually had a patient Tuesday ask me, I was about to do our treatment, and she just like out of the blue asked me, when you got into pelvic health, did you know you were going to start a business? I knew I was coming on the podcast with you actually in a couple days, and I was like, that was timely. But it was so easy for me to say, no way. Like, I had no idea that starting a business would be a possibility, something I could do, like any of that. But when I think about why I got into pelvic health, I think it's really a very similar thing that kind of got me starting a business. I don't know. Do you mind if I share a
I'd
slide?
love to hear people's origin stories. Absolutely.
Okay, I started thinking about pelvic health because I had my own pelvic health journey. It wasn't exactly pelvic floor, but it was a women's health condition. I was diagnosed in my early 20s with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I'm not in my 20s anymore. And it was quite a while ago, and they didn't really know a lot about it at the time. But I was trying to get off birth control. And so it had been years I had been on it, and I wasn't able to get my period back. And so I went to my doctor, and they were just like, just wait. And then I'd go back to my doctor, and they'd just be like, just wait. And finally, I went to a doctor who was like, okay, we'll run some tests. So they ran some tests, and I got a voicemail on a Friday that told me that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome and that I should probably just Google it. I basically, the treatment would be to go back on birth control, and that some people are helped by losing weight. In my early 20s, I was a runner. I was really lean. That piece of advice wasn't helpful. And going back on birth control wasn't really what I was going for because I was really trying to figure out my health journey. Eventually, I wanted to be a parent, all of that. So I really felt lost. And I spiraled for a while. And then I found a group in California that specialized in polycystic ovarian syndrome. Once I found them, I was a travel physical therapist at the time, by the time I found them. And it was a whole group of people, all with different specialties, all spending all day, every day on that condition. And so, while obviously they didn't cure it, I felt seen, I felt cared for. I
Mhm.
felt like these people were willing to help me. At the time, there wasn't a lot of research. They asked me to be a part of the research. But that story really got me thinking about my own career. And I loved supporting people in getting back to the things they love to do and having shoulder pain and knee pain and foot pain and all those things. But I started realizing I really wanted to dive into something that could be that life-changing and meaningful with a more intimate, sort of just like very more complex, perhaps in some ways, setting. And so I was like, I heard about this pelvic floor thing. But when I was in PT school, I actually, when I first got there, didn't even know there was a pelvic floor, which is mind-blowing to think about. We learn all parts of the body and they just like skim right over that part. Um,
Totally.
but it got me really a lot more curious than I ever had been. I started taking courses and like really seeking out mentors and things like that. And then it just all made sense. And then I like fell back in love with PT. And especially as I started integrating yoga and being a yoga teacher and movement teacher, bringing those things together made so much sense. And then when I was trying to do that in my regular jobs, so we moved to Maine once I got pregnant, and I was just working regular PT jobs, but they're really fast paced in network. One of the places I was at, I remember trying to get a yoga mat on the floor just to get patients to lay on the floor
Mhm.
and do some yoga. And it just wasn't the kind of floor you really wanted to get on. It just,
I hear
um,
that.
it didn't work the way that I felt like in my heart it could have. And when I had so many patients at once, I couldn't call their therapist and talk to their personal trainer. And so it just got really draining. And one day I was taking a yoga class in a studio that I was teaching at, and I just had this vision. I was like, what if I did this here? And so I was like, okay. And I like was friendly with the owner. And so we ended up having a 6-hour conversation. And we figured out that I was going to start treating patients in the changing room.
Oh
And
my gosh,
so
I love it.
so I brought in a plastic tub and a massage table and my pillow and my lubricant and like all of my equipment into this changing room behind the front desk of this yoga studio. And I basically just paid them for when I saw a patient in there. And I would see patients in there in between basically people changing. Like some people would come in and they'd, is anyone in here? Can I change? And I'd step out.
You make it
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. And so my major plan there was that I was going to just treat patients in there when I could. And then I worked at the nursing home for extra money because we still needed to pay the bills. And I was like, okay, this is good. This is better than what I was doing before. And then it was 5 months before the pandemic. And so thankfully at the time I didn't have a lot of overhead, but I did have to burn the ships on the nursing home because of the pandemic, have support, like childcare support, and be working in the nursing home. And so I decided to just go all in and I just never really looked back. I got really busy pretty quickly and didn't have any boundaries because I was in this whole like survival mode
Yeah.
of making it work. And so I treated patients all the time myself and never really put any systems together. And it was like Sunday night at 8 o'clock and I was treating a patient, that kind of thing. And it started to get to the point where I realized I was like, I need to get some help. I can't do this all myself. So that's
You
when
got to put some guardrails up.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when it evolved, and I started looking for support. And I was lucky enough that a friend of mine, who's also an acupuncturist, was home on maternity leave. So she jumped in and helped me with some back end things, and we brainstormed together. And then she started treating patients. And so then it was the two of us. And then I brought in my first PT. And that was probably like a year in.
Okay. But are you out of the changing room at this point?
I'm out of the changing room.
Okay.
I guess I could take you on that story. Yeah. So we got out of the changing room. But actually, my first PT that I hired, the original plan was for us to take turns in there.
Yeah.
And the studio had since moved to another location. I actually got to rent one treatment room full time. And so we did take turns in there. But at the same time, I opened the first clinic in Saco. So by the time I had my first PT, we had a standalone place that was ours.
So exciting. And so was this after 2020 or like in the middle of 2020?
Yeah, it was a little bit after 2020, like maybe, so it was May 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, so it was May of 2021,
Okay.
I believe, is when we started getting into the Saco clinic. And once Daisy started with me, she was our first PT.
Yeah.
So,
And then how long until you opened your second location in Scarborough?
so that was actually, so we kept the yoga studio treatment room. And so we had these two locations basically pretty close to since the beginning. And so we'd be up in that treatment room, and the rest of us would be in the Saco clinic. And then eventually, about 2.5 years ago, we realized we had so much need in Portland because that studio was in Portland that I was going to start to look for another space. And that's when we found Scarborough.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
So it transpired from like the cleaning room, the changing room into yeah. I think that, thank you for sharing your story, by the way. And I'm sorry to hear about your PCOS diagnosis and then what transpired. Unfortunately, I think a lot of women experience this.
Mhm.
And whether it's PCOS, whether it's, I actually, crazy aside, but I was listening to a podcast that's called The Retrievals. I don't know if you've listened to this podcast. That's like about them retrieving eggs and the person, it's like crazy. So if anyone hasn't listened to it, I'm just going to tell you like it's about egg retrieval, women that are having infertility. And there was a nurse at the clinic that was changing out the fentanyl that was supposed to be the painkiller
Mhm.
and putting saline in it because she was a fentanyl addict. And the women kept telling people, I feel everything. I feel everything. And nobody believed them. And
Mhm.
it's just a testament to sometimes when women explain their symptoms and people dismiss us from pain with sex. Oh, just have a glass of wine.
Mhm.
Or PCO, here's my symptoms. Oh, you just have to lose weight or Google what you have to do. Or I'm literally feeling the needle that you are putting into my uterus and them telling me that's impossible. You can't do it. So it's a testament to, I think, like a larger scale thing of what happens to women
Exactly.
globally. And you and I happen to be white women the prevalence that this happens to women of color is 5 times to 8 times the amount that it happens to white
Yeah.
women. So if people like you and I get dismissed, imagine like a woman of color that doesn't have a voice. I think too, when you find a passion of something. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And I also think sometimes it's the same thing with starting a business. Like most people, most of the women in the inner circle, if you asked all of them, I say the same thing. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I had no desire to open my business. I didn't know that was a thing. And so most of us are accidental entrepreneurs, which is also sometimes why we have no boundaries and guardrails. Right.
Exactly.
So now we're at what, gosh, 4 years since everything came to fruition. So tell us what your day to day looks like now. So what is the setup? You have 2 locations. Do you still have that like third one where you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So give us a
Yeah.
rundown of where everything is, how many people are working for you, also a little bit about your Root to Rise studio. So you have some wellness component to it also.
Absolutely. Yeah. So actually, when we started our Scarborough clinic was when we actually had the opportunity to have a studio space because we had this extra room. But just to give you an idea of what the practice looks like now, so we still have the Saco clinic. There's 3 treatment rooms there. Our Scarborough clinic has 4 treatment rooms and the studio space. And then we have a clinic that's a satellite space up in a birth center, about 50 minutes north of our Scarborough clinic.
Okay.
Um, and so we're up there one day a week. And actually, just a really cool side note with that is that we just trade the midwives that are up in the birth center come down and go into one of my providers' treatment rooms, and they see their patients there on Fridays, and then we see our patients up in the birth center. So it just helps us be a little bit more accessible to people up north, more north. But it also we love it because it changes a little bit that standardization of care. Because one of the big things that we believe so much is that pelvic floor therapy should be standard of care for pregnant and
Mhm.
postpartum people. In addition, so many other subsets of our healthcare as well, but that it should be normalized. And so we actually see every one of their clients for a session through them.
Love it.
And then they can stay on with us. So that's been a really wonderful partnership that really speaks to our mission quite a bit.
But how many
But
people do you have in your team now?
yeah, so I have 3 full-time physical therapists, 1 occupational therapist, and
Okay.
2 acupuncturists that are
Nice.
part-time. Me, and then I have 2, soon to be 3 admins.
Love it. So it's grown. So with growing pains, obviously they're called growing pains for a reason. Since most of the audience, the listeners are business owners or maybe aspiring business owners, what are some of the growing pains that you have experienced while growing to this size, to where you are today?
Yeah. Starting a little bit from the beginning, I just think back to when I used to write my leads on a notebook, and I didn't know they were called leads. So I just wrote people who want to come see me on a notebook. And then, of course, I had to figure out who to cross off and all of that. So I would say in the more towards the beginning, just building out systems that were better than my notebook and Google Docs. So especially once having a few other providers on board with me, I really needed to figure out like I can't use my cell phone anymore. And we need to have a place to really be tracking our patients and all of that in a more sort of professional space. So that big growing pains was just investing in EMR system,
Yeah,
scheduling system,
technology.
technology, getting out of Google. I still use Google Workspace, but I used to manually make all of the super bills on a Google Doc.
Yeah.
So just that was a big sort of first step because all I knew when I went into this was that I was going to make it work, figure it out, and I didn't really have all of the other parts lined up. And so I would say those are the growing pains in the beginning. And then the growing pains end up being about once you have your team, at least for me, about figuring out how to actually be a leader.
Yeah.
So I never was a manager or a supervisor at any of the clinics I worked at. And I love people so much in relationships and building that with patients, but it's such a different skill set and journey with people that join you and on the journey with you and of
Mm.
your team. And so I think it's definitely still an evolution for me, but with every phase of growth, I've learned so much in figuring out how to communicate and structure positions and have those conversations with people and just develop and really nurture the team and being the one that's responsible for the team culture and
Yeah.
all of those parts. Such a learning curve. And that's why having mentorship and support can be so helpful because I think that at least for somebody like me, and I think a lot of us that go into this work, we are empathetic. We
Of
really
course.
care about people, and then we build this thing that's our baby. Then we love it so much, we want everyone to love it as much and be
Mhm.
happy. And I think my one of my big learning adventures that I'm on right now is learning that I can't always make everyone happy and that there's a different dynamic when you're the owner, when you're the boss, than when you're on the team. And being okay with that and learning to grow with that and celebrate that is something that is a journey for me every day.
Every phase of business ownership, especially when you decide, to grow beyond yourself, which at some point that is a decision for everyone because we all could stay ourselves, but that is a little limiting in the fact that if we don't work, then we don't make money. So when people decide to grow beyond themselves, I think we don't realize that now there's a management component to it. And there is a difference between being a manager when it's not your business either. So here's the other part. So yes, it's a totally different set of skills. Totally different set of skills to manage people doing the work versus just doing the work, right? But then it's a different set of skills when you're the owner, because the thought process that we have sometimes is as a manager who's getting paid to manage people, like it's not our risk necessarily, right? It's not the
Yeah.
risk of that manager. But for the owners, the management, and if someone fails, the thought process in our head is that's taking money literally out of the food off of our table. So if
Mhm.
someone's failing or if someone leaves or is not performing or it literally it's more than just like not doing a job. It's our in our head, it's like they're literally taking food out of my kid's mouth or they're taking money out of my kid's college fund. And so it's a whole different set of things. And most of us, I'm going to make a pretty general stereotype, but most of us, especially as women that are high achievers, that open our own business, most of us are perfectionists. We got to this place for a reason. We were probably like top of our class in PT school. We learned the thing, we did the work, we get the good grades. And that's not always how business runs. And so it's really hard because we're people pleasers. We are sometimes, yes, we're very feeling based people, obviously what we got into for a reason, but we're also people pleasers. We're perfectionists mostly because we don't want other people to see us fail. And so there's all these things wrapped up into us having those difficult conversations with people. And I think I say that's the heavy weight that most of us feel, even though we want to point to the, oh, I'm seeing too many patients, or I have too much on my plate, or I have to teach this class or whatever. We want to point to the binary things, but the truth is being people's emotional go-to person is huge and
Yes.
it weighs a lot. It weighs a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
And
can be
it's really
something,
hard.
and something that like also is such a special part of what's evolved to be my role. Like I
Yeah.
love I think about it and I'm like, I never knew I wanted a business. Then I never knew I wanted a team. But then when I was just working by myself, I love working alongside other people. And I love like having a group effort towards a strong mission and all of those things. And so having the team then becomes like my favorite thing. But it also can become like the thing that I'm like definitely having to like grow with the most
I think
because
that's a really good thing that you just said, though. Sometimes we get so in the minutia and we're like, oh my God, everyone's doing this to me. Woe is me. And I'm there. I say it because I'm like, I know what that feels like. But for you to sit and remember, no, I love having a team. I love the collaboration. I love working with other people. It's good to remember this is why we did it.
hmm
And we do have the power to control the controllable. We can't control, and I've said this in the group lots of times. I say we are not responsible for another adult's emotional reaction, but we are responsible for how we communicate things, right? How we articulate our expectations, how we have the conversations that might be difficult or not fun to have. But if you choose not to have them, you're just choosing a different hard path because not having the conversations
Yeah.
creates a different hard path as well. I appreciate you sharing that. What are some of the things that have happened to you that you never even, if I would have told you 5 years ago, this is where you'd be, like, what are some of those things that you never even imagined would happen?
Like challenges
No,
or just
like surprise benefits.
oh gosh. I mean, it's if I close my eyes and I think back to 5 years ago, everything that I'm doing feels like I can't believe it in so
Yeah.
many ways.
We
Kind of,
were literally in a changing room.
I
So,
know.
like, now you have three locations.
Yeah. So to answer that honestly, I really could give you any of those examples, whether it's just having conversations with people in the community and having them say, I've heard such wonderful things about your practice, or going by somebody in the waiting room and being like, wow, that person is impacted by what we're doing. And I have never even met them myself. Like the idea that we've gotten to this place that it really feels bigger than me is something that also is very surprising to me when I actually sit with that. Those are just like, that's just a general feeling more than anything. But I would also say that one thing with working with you and like a big sort of shift for me, both from a comfort zone, comfort level, and also just growth, is really looking at numbers.
Mhm.
And I think when I went into the business, the practice, all I wanted to do, and I think part of it was because of the pandemic, right? Like I was calculating out that, oh my gosh, I have to pay, if I just have $700 a month, I can pay my expenses. So,
Yeah.
and it felt like I wanted to protect that. And it was like something very important in that way. And I think I went for a really long time just being like, okay, there's enough in the checking account. I can pay people. We're doing okay enough. And never really had the maybe courage to, I don't really know how to analyze this. I don't really know
Yeah.
how to like, and I don't know that I like have what it takes to like put myself in the seat to analyze it and to look at it. And one of the things that's just been so invaluable is just having you to be like, look at this, look what you're doing, look at these numbers, actually. And I think that has really helped me grow because it's a whole nother level of thinking about impact and like what we can do and like what we've already done, which I think is,
Yeah. Your numbers are spectacular. You could possibly cross the seven-figure mark this year. We've talked about that. It's a possibility, which is in 4 years, being able to do that is incredible, like amazing. Less than 4% of businesses ever cross a seven-figure mark. And 2% of those businesses are owned by women, less than 2%. It's amazing. So it's great. It's so great. And but you are open to feedback, which is important. Like you're open to coaching and you're open to learning. Like none of us, listen, could you imagine if you came out of high school or college and you're like, I'm going to be a pelvic health PT. I just think I'm going to do it. And you walked into a clinic and you're like, I'm here. No, we went through you guys as doctors went for longer than I did, but 3 years of like full-time school. And then we get into business and we're just like, oh, I should know this. No, we can learn it. It's not, but there is something, and I had this too, like being afraid to ask for help or being afraid to say, I don't know that, because they'd be like, what business do you have? Again, it's from that judgment of other people versus being like, okay, I don't know the answer to this. I can figure it out. Let me learn it. You're a smart individual. You can make it work. And also learning to then hire for the things you don't want to do. I don't
yeah,
believe, and I say this to all of you ladies too, like we shouldn't abdicate completely our responsibility. We shouldn't abdicate our numbers. We should be able to look at our books and understand them, but it doesn't mean we have to do the bookkeeping. It doesn't mean we
right.
have to reconcile the QuickBooks.
Right.
Okay.
I love your phrase, feelings are not facts.
Feelings are
And
not facts.
and I do love to like I didn't have coaching in the first like year or so, and I think that is for me was really good because I feel like it helped me to like trust, to have some trust and in like me and what I needed and like to be able to receive feedback well, and then to have the coaching once trying to like muddle through it, and then to be like, feelings aren't facts, feelings are valid, but the facts are actually what helps my feelings now. I know that sounds
Yeah,
really silly, but
but it's true.
there have been times where I've felt like so anxious about X, Y, and Z, and potentially with numbers. And then you'd be like, okay, let's look at the numbers. And then when I actually brought myself there, even though I was like resisting it, I was like, oh, okay, it's okay, you
Yeah.
know? So they go together, but
They
I love
do.
that phrase because I think it's really powerful and it just is a good reminder when I start floating in the other direction again that, okay, come back, look at your numbers and
Yep.
it'll be better.
Yeah. It's like I could say to you, like, I'm feeling that I have a feeling that you're mad at me for something. And you could be like, really? I'm not mad at you at all. I don't, where would you get that? And I could have just misread like an eye roll. Like you literally could have had something in your eye. And so again, feelings are not facts. I could feel that you're upset with me, but you're not upset with me. So that's actually not a fact, right? And so we have feelings all the time. And you're right, feelings are valid. And when somebody says, I don't feel like I could make this decision right now in the business, sometimes I'll push back a little bit to say, like, why are you feeling that way? And there are times where people are just like, it's too much. Okay, great. It's too much. You don't want to raise your prices right now. I understand. You're doing a lot of other things. Great. What's one thing you can stomach that will move the needle in your business? And everyone's different. All of us
Right.
are different. Your business should be what you want for you and your life and your future of your family, right? And it doesn't have to be, nobody else should be able to come in and tell you what to do. I like to present you with the options. And then based on how I know you and all those things, say, I know you're telling me you want this, but based on what you've told me before, I'm not sure is that really what you want now? Because we all get distracted with new fun projects or, oh, maybe. And I'm like, I think you're just distracting yourself by not focusing on this.
Yeah. Perspective from somebody who's in it with you, but isn't you is so helpful and so important. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely like a big piece of
I
with
love
you.
it. I think that I was super excited to work with you and your business. And so talk to me a little bit about like the other, so you have acupuncture, you have
Yeah.
your traditional like pelvic health direct service. You also do some like wellness stuff in terms of like yoga and things like that. What's that offshoot like in your business?
Yeah, so it started just from the beginning with me as a yoga teacher already. So I was integrating pelvic health and yoga sessions together from the beginning. So that could look like whether we're integrating breath work, mindfulness. A lot of times, like with pelvic health, we might do like a little yoga sequence before getting up onto the table to do some manual therapy to try to help with the nervous system, things like that. But primarily, I was really passionate about bringing those intentional movement type practices to therapy and vice versa because it really helps to change the paradigm too. Because I felt like in the medical model with physical therapy specifically, it was like people were coming to you because something was wrong, something was broken,
Mhm.
and we had to fix it. And there's this sort of just like doctor's office thing going on. And so I like to really think of like how much we can optimize and think about what our potential is. And also think about the fact that maybe there's not something broken, but we just need to like tap into these ways that we can communicate with our body. And yoga, while it doesn't resonate with everyone, and a lot of times in pelvic health, if someone's, I hate yoga, I'll just be like, that's fine. We'll just breathe and stretch and we won't do any yoga. That's fine. But it just pairs so well. And so that being said, it's doing that in a group setting is also really therapeutic and healing. And so it just made sense. I love the idea of creating a community and so that we can support our patients, through all different modalities and so they can experience some of that healing together. And so once we started having the studio space, we started offering group classes. So yoga for core and pelvic floor, lots of perinatal classes. So prenatal yoga, postpartum baby and me yoga, support groups. We have a fertility support group. We have
Yeah.
postpartum support groups. We might start another type of support group for hypermobility, different sort of subsets of people's needs where they might feel
Yeah.
alone and kind of
Like
just,
lactation and stuff
yep,
like that. Yeah.
exactly.
To me, there was nothing more lonely than breastfeeding. Not everyone has that experience, but it was really hard for me. Some people like are great and easy for me, but I just think, and I think it's again, I think it's a thing with women that everyone's just, oh, it's natural. It should be natural. And then if it doesn't feel natural to you, you feel like something's wrong with you.
Same.
And you're like, what's wrong with me? I'm a terrible mom. I wasn't meant to do this. And this all this like crazy stuff. So I love
Yeah.
that you have that, all those, and just being able to talk about it.
Yeah. And it also allows for a little bit more accessibility for people to receive some of our services and our care and our information without needing to do like the one-on-one sessions, if that's
Yeah.
something isn't fitting for them. So it allows us to really support the community in lots of different ways. We bring other practitioners, people in the community in. We had a nurse practitioner a few months ago come in and talk about perimenopause and menopause. We have other providers doing some different groups in our space. Then we do provider networking events. So
Oh, cool.
that's really rewarding. It's one of those things where you
Yeah,
think, oh, it'll be fun, and it is fun, and it helps with awareness and things. But what comes out of it is just like that deep connection back to our why, because we're all there being like, oh my gosh, we love this work so much, and how we can support each other. And some of my providers will come with me, and it really refuels us. It's fun to be able
I
to
love
host those
it.
in our own space.
Yeah, that's really great. Are you seeing, I'm curious for this, are you seeing more women go doulas, midwife versus like traditional childbirth? Or do you think how's that playing out in the real world these days?
Yeah, I don't have hard numbers, speaking of numbers and facts.
Yeah, more like in your practice. Are you seeing,
Yeah.
oh, this is more than I used to see? Does it tend to be certain types of women and families? What are you seeing just in the real world in your practice?
Yeah, I would say from the experience that I had just moving to Maine, I didn't know what a I didn't know what a doula or a midwife was when I came here, which still blows my mind with how many people I work with that are them or are working with them. So I do think just in general, the awareness around that being an option, working with outside of the traditional sort of OBGYN model is people are now like, oh, let me choose between versus I think that at least my oldest is 11. So at least like 10 or so years ago, that was very much less. I would say just anecdotally that. And then I would say we have a really strong presence of midwifery care and doula providers here in Maine. And so it's quite common that people will
Mm.
go that route. We have some midwives that are certified nurse midwives and work in the
Oh,
hospital. And so that's a nice middle place if you don't want to have a home birth or be in a birth center, but you also don't necessarily want to go all the way to the OB.
got it. Yep.
But we have great practices here that are OBGYN practices. And I think even just in the years of Root to Rise, there's so much more, not just because of us, but in those years, they're so much more open to different birthing positions, going to pelvic floor therapy during pregnancy. We still hear the stories of people that go to their doctor and they say, oh, just wait till you have your babies, or wait until it's bad enough. It's not bad enough yet. And they just normalize these
Yeah.
symptoms. And my why originally was my own PCOS journey, but then of course I had my own kiddos and then I hear these stories too. And so that just fuels it even more. But I would say really they are becoming more aware of options they should be recommending to patients. Maine Med is a big hospital here and lots of people say really great things about their experience there. So we just really support it all.
That's
Um,
great. What are
yeah, so
some
I would,
things that you think physicians should be referring patients to pelvic health prenatally? Like that instead of saying
yeah.
just wait, what are some conditions that maybe women could be hearing this and say, "Oh, I should speak up if this is what I'm feeling."
Yes. Number one, I would say, and this might just be, this is the bubble, the world I live in, but is that if you're pregnant, you should go.
Okay.
Um, I really do, because the thing is that you can get a baseline, even if you're feeling really great. I always think of the smaller the mountain to climb, the faster you're going to get down it, probably on the other side. And
It's true.
so if we're going in and because a lot of the work that we do in pelvic floor therapy in general, but certainly definitely in pregnancy is like really building foundations of like breath and pressure management and posture and movement patterns and balancing strength and mobility and all of those things so that we can prepare for delivery and have more optimal postpartum recovery. But even if you're feeling great, the body's changing so much that
Mhm.
you can build a lot of that foundation before you have symptoms, or maybe you won't have them because you built that. But I would say that it is pretty common and normal to have leaking, right? Sneezing, coughing, and jumping, running, whatever you're doing, if there's leaking or urgency or frequency, a lot of times the doctors will just be like, yeah, you have a baby sitting on your bladder. If there is leaking, even if it's a little, sometimes patients will say, I don't leak, just a little when I sneeze. And so then we're like, that's leaking. It's great that
Yeah.
it's a little, but it's telling us a story about the system. And so if we can listen to that story and say there's something that needs some work and some balance, then ideally it doesn't necessarily get worse. And it's so fun when we're working with people that are pregnant and their symptoms in pregnancy. And then they're like, oh, I didn't even think it would get better till after the baby. And they're getting growing, more pregnant, and then their leaking is going away, right? Or their
Yeah.
pain is better. And then they can go into their delivery with a system that's certainly more ready for taking on that challenge as well. Pain, pressure, heaviness, that can feel really normal because obviously there's more weight from the baby, but
Yeah. I don't think women really understand what that means.
yeah,
I don't think they're like, what does that mean? Pressure.
yeah.
Is there a description that people that like the difference between this is normal pressure? Because yes, as you get further along into your pregnancy, obviously things are gonna just especially depending on where the baby's sitting and whether
Sure.
they're breech or not, whatever. But is there like a feeling that people describe to you when you're talking about this is the kind of pressure we're talking about?
Yeah, yes. There's a few different ways people describe it. So sometimes people just say it just feels like something's in that space. So like in the vaginal space or something's in the way or like a tampon is like partially falling out, that kind of feeling.
Okay.
Some people will describe as like a fullness, which is hard sometimes to discern if it's just the weight of baby, but we really shouldn't be walking around with a whole lot of that. No, there's
Okay.
ways we can alleviate that. At least getting it. I think if you're having that fullness or that feeling like something's in that space, it's worth getting an
Check
assessment
that. Yeah.
because even if it's not what we might be looking for, and I can describe that to you, if that would be helpful too. It still can be helpful to learn how to offload and to manage pressure, even if it's not that it could be something like a prolapse or
It's
it could
not
be,
a danger sign, but it is happening. And so, like, how can we make this feel better
yeah,
now? And I do
yeah,
think I've gone through two pregnancies, and I don't think my OBGYN talked to me
no,
anything about that
yeah,
ever.
exactly.
I don't remember asking them asking me any of those questions ever.
Exactly. Exactly. And then I had a C-section for my second child, and they knew what I did for work, but no one ever said anything about doing a C-section scar massage or, anything like that. And
My doctor, I think I've said this on the show before, but my doctor, who also knows what I do for a living, told me that my incontinence post baby was due because I was very light skinned and my collagen is not as taut as other cultures.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, like the things that our doctors will say, like
Like with this, yeah, I was like,
that language stays with us. Like I have a
for sure.
friend who, outside of like the lens of pregnancy, she was young and she went to a chiropractor who told her never to bend backwards anymore because she had a back pain, back injury. So she went through up until she's 45 now. We were out for a walk and she's, yeah, I just don't bend my back because and it's like in her head since she was in her
Yeah.
late teens. And
Our
it's,
language is very how we say things as practitioners, even us as practitioners. When how many people have you heard when someone's, oh, your glute's not firing? So I have patients come in all the time and they're like, yeah, my glute's not firing. I'm like, if your glute wasn't firing, you'd be paralyzed, you'd be on the ground, you wouldn't be able to walk. Let's
yeah,
be
that
real. So
language.
our language is really important. And I totally agree. And I think that's good to know. I never thought about it that way. If you're pregnant, maybe just go get an
Just go.
assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go get. When you're pregnant, they tell you to go to the dentist more. Like they tell you like all different, and you don't. So that that's a good.
Yeah.
Just go get an assessment.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, you just don't have to be in pain. Like, even back pain
Yeah,
is not, you don't have to be walking around with back pain just because you're pregnant. There's so many things that we can do to support it, and it just becomes normalized. And then it's the same
yeah,
postpartum. But I think it's just one of those things to just, a lot of times, if the doctors, they don't have to give the answers, they don't have to say, this is how you do it, because they're not necessarily trained to
correct.
functionally retrain people. However, they just need to say, there are people out there who can help support you in this
Yeah. And I
and bring
think
it to
what's
light.
different for prenatal patients is like most, and again, let's just put a caveat, like this is a stereotype and a generalization. I know not everyone's like this. So don't come at me if you're a doctor and this is not how you practice. We recognize there are some people out there, but a lot of times when doctors, they're trained to, my patient has a problem, let me give them a solution, right? And so oftentimes if like I have back pain, then they're like, oh, take this medicine. When you're pregnant, most of the time, unless it's something very urgent, they're not going to prescribe medication to you. And if
Right.
they do, even some women are like, I don't want to take medication while I'm pregnant. So
Yeah.
that's where you get to that thing of suck it up. Like they can't tell you to drink alcohol. They can't tell you to have some cannabis so you can relax. They can't tell you to do all this other stuff. And that, so then their answer is just suck it up versus saying, you know what, here's a referral to a pelvic health practitioner. They could probably give you some strategies to work
Right.
through this. You don't have to be in pain.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And
I think it's so
to
great.
be fair too, I think a lot of the all of us physical therapists are trained a lot of times that like if it's this, do that.
Right.
And I think that being in pelvic health has really challenged me in a good way. I think that's what kind of made me love being a physical therapist again, was that I could be really creative because it takes so many different, there's so many systems and it takes a whole village a lot of times, right? And every person's strategies are going to be unique and different. And so we can't just be like, okay, this is the thing or it's nothing. And so that's where the collaboration and like the sort of the mission of our practice is so much that we are going to reach out to your other medical team. We're going to work together with your therapist. We're going to talk to each other about how you're doing so that it's not just do these 5 exercises and then that's all I got for you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So that kind of leads me to another question, like what makes Root to Rise different?
One of the ways we're different is that we have multiple disciplines under the same, not only under the same roof, but like within the same practice. So I think the fact that you can come and see your acupuncturist, who is also your pelvic floor therapist, and then maybe you have the person who's your yoga teacher, and then, you don't have to play telephone, telling everyone what everyone else is doing. Like we get together and we talk about it and we figure out what's going to make the most sense. So it's that real sense of full support.
Yeah.
um, that is a huge thing that makes us different. The other part that makes us different is that we're never going to just say, that's all I've got for you. So speaking of that, like if we get to a place where we've tried all the things, we've brainstormed all the ways, we'll be honest about that and then help our patients find what might be their next thing that's going to move the needle and just not give up on people and like really just be a resource for them through their lifespan. Not always
So good.
in the middle of active treatment, but that they know that like we're always there for them, that we're a trusted resource and that we care.
That's
Makes
a
us different.
huge benefit. That's a huge difference. And I think that's definitely something that you lean into. And I think that your messaging and your branding speaks to that a lot. But that when people say things like, I'm sure price becomes an objection sometimes for people, but you're not just getting like that service, you're getting literally someone walking beside you through this journey, which can be confusing to some people. Like sometimes pretty straightforward, you're good to go. But to have a resource, be able to have connections and contacts. And it's almost similar to the way that I feel like with my mentorship programs. Like I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend
Right.
to, but I do have a network of people that I'm like, you need a website. Here's 3 people I would recommend. I've vetted all of them. Here you can go. You need a bookkeeper. Here's my referrals for bookkeepers. They're really great. Here's who you should go to. Do you need advice on investing? Here's a person that I know. Like it's having a network so you don't have to
Yeah.
feel so lost with everything. And that's
Right.
super valuable.
It's so helpful. Even just as a person in your program, it's so much less overwhelming to have that trusted resource who's going to then be like that triage a little bit. And to be able to do that, especially because so many of our patients they've had chronic pain for a really long time, or they've had no answers for a really long time. And so it's just something it's really important for us that people feel really safe with us. And I think that has been one of as I've grown, because I can ensure that in me,
Yeah.
like if I'm the one in front of the patient every time, but to be able to really instill that in my team and a lot of time investing with them and really making sure like they all know who the best therapist to refer patients to, like they all know what resources are available and that like what we would do with a patient case that maybe wasn't going as expected. And I think having that consistency across the team is hard and good and important.
Yeah. I think you've grown an incredible practice.
Thank you.
I feel super, super great. I'm excited to see what the next 6 months of the year brings for you. If I could ask you, maybe, I mean, you did talk about how the numbers has really helped, like having you deep dive in the numbers and getting a little support on that. Is there something else that you feel was really invaluable to you in terms of like joining the mentorship program and maybe something that you didn't expect that you would get out of it? a year
Yeah.
ago when you joined?
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. And by the way, the numbers support was not just a little bit of support. That has been really impactful for me. But I would say so I had some coaching early on that was part of a big group. And while that was maybe the right thing for me at the time, I think one of the really special things about the inner circle truly is that it's not just like a title, like there's this really warm, welcoming space that you hold, and you hold it really authentically.
Oh, thank
You
you.
know, if we have a coaching call day and I'm like maybe on the verge of tears, like I don't have to feel like, oh gosh, like I have to show up as this. I can just show up as me. And no question is a dumb question. And you just approach it with such like an empathetic, from an empathetic space as well. And I think that then allows at least me to feel really safe in it. I think
Thank
during,
you. That makes me
of
so
course,
happy.
well,
Thank
I
you.
think during this time of growth, it's the beginning growth is exciting and there's a lot of pieces to put in like the puzzle. You have to figure out all the logistics, but the growth, it's actually like the really like deep stuff is the
Yeah.
stuff, at least for me, that has come up later. And that just having you has been just such a big part of getting, I don't want to say getting through that, but like evolving through it.
Thank you. It's hard. It's one of those things where if that's what I have found, anyways, and going through this myself personally, like if I sold that at the beginning, people wouldn't buy into that because they don't see it. It would be like, have you ever had a patient that their body language is like that their nervous system is just on like this and they're like, I don't, but they're talking like this and they're like, no, I'm super calm and they can't see it and you're trying to tell them that what they need is like nervous system, you have to get them there before they can understand it. And so
Yeah.
even though you're super intelligent, you're very empathic, I understand you also believe in like authenticity and safe space. It's not that. It's just like sometimes when we're in it, it's like numbers, systems, things, and then it's like we have to become a different person as our business is growing, and that's where the real magic happens, for sure.
Mhm.
But it's
Yeah.
hard to get there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm so grateful for you and for this journey
Oh,
that
I'm so happy you're in the program. I do remember so we had this conversation almost this time last year because this is when you joined the program. And initially you were like, oh, maybe I'll just wait till January because we do our July and January cohort. And I was
yes.
like, you can do what you choose. I don't want you to feel pressured. I will tell you though that if you start now, by the time January rolls around and you're ready to like, you'll kick off 2026 feeling in a much more stable place. So how do you feel after decide? Because initially we're like, I'll just wait. So how do
Yep.
you feel after deciding to jump in last July versus waiting until January?
Oh my gosh, it was the best decision. I think I can absolutely say that what you said would happen is happening and did happen as I'm going into this quarter. Where are we? Almost quarter
Quarter,
four-ish.
yeah, no, we're
We're,
at the end of
we're
quarter
in
two. We're wrapping up. We're starting
going
quarter
into
three.
yes.
Yeah,
Gosh, time flies.
I know,
Um,
so fast.
But I would say absolutely so glad that I started when I did. I also think that a big part of what I was feeling when I was delaying it was somehow I was feeling scattered. Like I wouldn't be
Mhm.
able to jump in and really hit the ground running and do it right and do it well. And I remember you said something like, you can totally come in a hot mess. And then I was thinking like, but will I get the most out of it if I did that? And I think I got more out of it because I did come in then, that I didn't come in like January 1st, my pencil like ready to go,
Yeah,
like student, that I just kind of started when I did. And it really did give me a runway and also set the tone for just my recovering perfectionism that like I can just be where I'm at and you are willing and fully capable of holding space for me then. I didn't need to be like ready.
yeah.
So
I think that's a really good objection, not an objection, but like a myth buster. Because I think one of the things even in PT, like I'm telling you, like this all goes side to side, right? You might get people that are like, oh, I can't commit to it right now. Like it's I have too much on my plate. I have two kids. I have this, or like people come into the program too, and they're like, oh, I don't know, this isn't a good time for my business. I think the thought process. So like in your head, were you thinking, I'm wondering if I was it that you were wondering if the program would work for you because you might not be able to fully commit? Was that what you were worried about? Or were you worried if I spend the money and it doesn't work for me? Like what was coming up for you at that time? Do you remember?
I think it was, well, it was definitely a combination because I remember talking to my friend who was was about to start. And I
Yeah,
remember thinking about, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money because it was definitely more than I had spent
it
on
is.
anything per month for sure. And so I was like, I'll be in a maybe a better financial position then. So that definitely crossed my mind. But I think that like when I really think of what my resistance was, it was really more, will I actually go to the coaching calls? Like,
Yeah,
what if I have like too much to do and it's late at night and I need to sleep and just knowing myself, like I
yeah.
didn't want probably just to take on too much.
And what happened? You
I
did it and
I did it and it was great.
it was fun.
So
Yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
was good. And
it was
and I
good.
think yeah, so I'm really glad I did. And I'm a year here and I'm still going. So I'm yeah.
I wanted to pull up this spreadsheet that I had. Okay. You made this presentation. Call
We're in
it
Atlanta.
January to April of 2025 versus January to April of 2024. Your revenue was up 58%.
Yeah.
And we started working together in July of 2024.
Yep.
Okay. Your profit margin was up 70% from January to April of 2024. Your visits were up 62%.
Yeah.
So, and this is metrics that you presented, right? So
Right.
there, and so when you look at, we started working together in July of 2024, having that kind of, and this isn't even looking at what Q4 was for you of last year, but just having that runway that you could hit January off and you did an extra. And by the way, when we're talking about like 58%, that's almost $200,000 for you.
Yeah.
And
My team grew a
profit.
lot since then too. So that
It
was
did.
helpful.
Your
But
team grew, which meant that you had, but you also then had the bandwidth to
mhm.
grow the team,
Yeah.
to train the team, to put the guardrails up for your team. And you've had some hiring challenges, some staffing challenges, a lot in the last, like, I know a lot, and I get it. But I also think that you are not that you came in super strong to the program, like really strong. And that's why I was like, I know that you're gonna I
Mhm.
wasn't trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I was like, I know you're going to do great. I know you are. And I also know that because these staffing challenges happened when they did, even though they suck and they were hard, and I know how hard they were for you, I think you were in such a better place to be able to handle it and not like wither, even though
Yes.
it was really hard. Because I
Yes.
even felt bad. I was like, oh,
I
not
know my
again.
message to you, and you're like, not, no, not again.
I was like, no, not again. But
I know.
because the problems don't go away. I think that's the
Right.
difference. I think people think, oh, I do this program and now I have no, like they don't
Yeah.
go the same way with our patients. I didn't miraculously make your disc better. Like it's still going to be there, but now you have the tools and you become much better equipped to handle the situation. Yeah,
I
we
love
just
all
get
your
better.
PT business analogies or
I
something.
think because we can understand it from that way, because
Yeah.
we're the ones giving our patient that advice. And I'm like,
Yep.
it's the same thing, just in business. So people can be
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's tell everyone where they can find you. You know what? We had one of our other businesses in the program actually got a client from listening to this podcast. So maybe you'll get some
Amazing.
clients. So let us know, let's know like from your brick and mortar, like what are your handles, your social media and your website? Where can people go to look for you?
So our website is root2risephysicaltherapy.com. Our handle on Instagram is at root to rise PT. Our Facebook handle is actually at root to rise pelvic health. So that one's
Okay.
a little
We'll link
different.
everything in the show notes. And
Yeah.
then you have a studio Instagram too for like your wellness class
Yeah.
side.
That one is at root to rise studio.
I love
And
it.
our studio is located in Scarborough, Maine.
Yeah, and you're in Maine. Love it. So if anyone's vacationing in Maine over the summer, they should check it out. Although
Yes.
it's already the end of July. But this episode airs like less than a week from when we're recording it. So it's already
Amazing.
going to be out. We'll link all of that up in the show notes. I thank you so much, Jen, for taking the time to chat with us and share your story. I literally really cannot wait to see what the end of the year holds for you. And we might get that extra comma in your top line revenue. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you so much, Krista, for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Thanks.
Thanks.